I would say that, as Akbar suggested, maybe my presentation still does have something to do with one of our great leaders, Ram Koolhaas, in the field of architecture, of course. But however, I think I would like to show more my work as an architect here in China, and then give you an idea what can an architect do in China, or rather what issues an architect can address today. So anyway, so I'll start the slideshow. So 可大可小, as if you read Chinese, otherwise that's how you say it, how you pronounce it. And then that's, of course, the translation. In 1998, a year after the Hong Kong handover, and I had an exhibition at the association, Architectural Association, which is a school in London, and with two architect friends from Asia. One is from Singapore, the other from Taiwan. We were starting our practice. So by then, Koolhaas already wrote a very influential article which is called Bigness. An interesting argument he made is about how important that is for an architect to produce, quantitatively. And we, and personally especially, I thought that was really important, because a lot of European architects and a lot of American architects, not only that they didn't get to do bigger projects, they thought it would be only architectural, that if they own design houses, maybe art museums. Art museum is okay, and not a big housing project. And then you have to work for a developer, and then that's not really artistic endeavor anymore, and so on. So, and then the bigness actually really kind of changes the position. It really is about architects working with, for, in a way, this bigger world, society included in a way. So anyway, so we were doing that show, and we were having that idea in mind. So that exhibition actually was called 可大可小, possibly big, possibly small. We were thinking maybe we're going to have small offices. Can we address some bigger issues? Or really the bigger projects would be only viable if the details are worked out and so on. So there's that kind of a dialogue. So anyway, and then today, that's another picture of the show. And you see three people's work, actually. One you don't really see directly. It's a neon light going through these paper boxes, which is designed by my office. And then the third architect did the work on the floor. Anyway, today, that's what my office is working on. So on your left is a skyscraper in Shenzhen. Actually, this is the SCTV, the Shenzhen television station. So we're starting to pray it won't get burnt once it's built. Anyway, so you see some shapes and forms, but basically the idea, because I'm not going to talk about the project here tonight. It's still in a very early stage of the development, but the idea is that the shapes and the forms you see, they are all about how to shade the sun. It's to reduce the heat gain. So there's very much a concern of energy in the project, We'll talk about the other project though. So what you're looking at again in dimensions, in scales. This one on the left is 200 meters tall. The one on the right, on your right, is 2 meters tall. And formally they may look similar, but of course they're different projects. But I'm arguing that, in fact, it's really not 可大可小. You're either big or small. To make really, we're talking about design has to make sense. If to really make architecture something meaningful, that you have to take care of the urban scale as well as the the micro, the material scale. So the real focus of this presentation really is, from Metropolis, the two M's, M and M. So anyway, so I'm going to show you a series of projects, and then to give you an idea of the two scales. But yet, again, really the important part is actually what issues these scales would bring. So the first project is in Beijing, and you see Qianmen, the front gate. We're doing urban regeneration, urban design project. Actually, if I could have a laser pointer by any chance. If not, that's okay. I don't know. I have a device up here. I don't know what it is. Probably. Excellent. This is a little on the stylish side. All right. Okay. Okay. I was talking about Qianmen, which is right here. This is the Qianmen Square, and this is the central axis of the city of Beijing. So this street is Qianmen Street. It's here. However, the picture you're looking at, that's from the past. It has changed, actually more than we wish. And again, historic images. Well, the current condition, I'm afraid, is no longer current. Actually, before we took over the design of the project about a year ago, it's gone. 90% of it is being bulldozed. And then, so the challenge is not so much about historic preservation, but rather how can an architect in this case to bring back the essence, if you wish, of the old Beijing, and then not only to rebuild it and also accommodate a different kind of a program altogether. So the new programs for this area actually would be more commercial and public. So if you have been to the Xintiandi in Shanghai, in a way this is going to be very similar. Retail in the restaurants, maybe boutique hotels and so on, is being still developed. And in the past, for the most part, this whole area were residential. So we started by looking at some old city maps. And that's from the Qianlong era. So that's an accurate, actually a very accurate city of Beijing. So that's one of the major little streets. This is very narrow, but in Beijing people's mind, it's no longer a hutong, but a little street, which is called fresh fish mouth, 鲜鱼口. Because that's where the fresh fish used to come in. And anyway, so we were studying a number of things, particularly the scale and density. And then we developed a number of strategies. And since the old courtyard houses are gone. So we were using only the footprint to generate the floor plan for the new architecture, and then to reorganize still the courtyards, but in such a way that people can go in and go through all of them and without getting lost. And then it's public and commercial, so that the new way of experiencing the courtyards really has to be different. So, and then that's just the study of one type of experience. And then that's the floor plan. And for, if you can see, this bit essentially is being saved from the old buildings. So anyway, so the idea here, as you can see, is not so much the preservation of the old artifacts, or rather buildings, but the preservation of a kind of architectural experience, and then the preservation of urban fabric. So that's the kind of agenda we set up for ourselves. So here again, the fabric actually, it wasn't how people used to live. So for a number of decades, there were a lack of housing and so on. There were a lot of additions built by the residents themselves, and they are of a very poor quality and so on. But we took that kind of a density as really a reference, and then to really regenerate, as you can see, a kind of a fabric which reflects that kind of in a way process of reinvention and redesigning. And then here again, there's this design of a rather easy and way to experience all the courtyards, and then the possible options. Like you can go straight through, but you can meander through as well. As you do here and there. These are 3 blocks, of course. So anyway, that's a project we have been working on for over a year. Again, only a small portion here and here actually are reserved old buildings. So I just give you an idea, in case you have not been to Beijing. That looks like a really old picture, but that's taken not very long ago, maybe 5 years ago. And again, it's not so much about the old architecture, but there's a way of life. And then, you're looking at this gentleman, he enjoys this courtyard, and he looks like that he has actually peace in mind. That's kind of a quality we like to achieve, in our work. And this photo actually is taken by a Portuguese photographer, and he was so attracted by this, quality of life in the old hutongs and courtyard houses. So he's been coming back to Beijing almost every year now. And then this is some of the drawings we have done. And then, as you can see, we use a lot of traditional bricks. And then the question is, since we're not really just to build buildings as they used to be, because the programs are different, we don't really have the craft as we used to be, and so on. So we ought to really also to reinvent how the traditional bricks can be used. So there's a lot of study by my office as to how to lay bricks, and then these are the mock-ups we have done on this construction site. The project will take probably a couple more years to be completed, and then you're certainly welcome to come back to to China and to go to Beijing and to see it. A point I'd like to make, while we are working on the urban fabric and working on some of the big issues, and we're also working on the materials. So the urban issue, the material issue, they do come hand in hand, and together they would eventually really land on architectural reality. So another project I'll go through, because this is perhaps a bit dry, but I'll go through it quickly just to make one point. If you have been to China before, you have a chance to visit other parts of Shanghai or just outside of Shanghai. Anyway, you have to leave Puxi to get an idea of what I'm talking about. If you have been in Puxi all the time and then you don't really understand the argument I'm making. In China, for the past 3 decades, we're making new cities from within old cities, but also new cities really from the farmland. We're making one type of a city. Typically, the streets are so wide, 30-meter wide, 60-meter wide streets are very common. So they're no longer streets, because these really wide urban circulation are for automobiles, aren't really for pedestrians. So I don't think they are streets. And then we make, along with these streets, super blocks. Huge blocks. Just to give you an idea. So New York City blocks, they are 60 meters by 120 meters. And they are considered by European standard, by the way, pretty big, because typically European cities would have urban blocks somewhere between 50 meters to 100 meters square. In Berlin, they have super blocks. They are about 200 meters by 200 meters. And then in China, if it's 600 meter by 600 meter, they are considered on the small side. So 800 meter and so on. What do they need these big? What do we need these big blocks for? The only answer I can come up with is that we can make gated community. We can carve out the city to the extent the real city becomes the leftover of the gated community. And then can people walk, and where do people shop, and so on. I don't think these questions are really answered, because city, I don't want to, I'm coming back on Thursday. I'm having a conversation with Michael Keys there. But I want to save some of the words for Thursday. But in general, the cities, rather the new cities of China, have been built for economic development. They are not really for people to live. There is a big difference. Livability has not been an issue. So now, however, we're saying to our clients, to the government agencies we work with, and say, look, we have been building like this for 30 years. We have seen, we have witnessed all the problem of this rather unlivable city. So you may have a job, you may start your own company, all right, but the experience in these cities are really not pleasant. In fact, probably not even convenient or comfortable to begin with, and so on. So in order to make a city that is less polluted without much of a traffic jam, we have to do it differently. So this is outside of Shanghai, the city we're in right now, in a satellite town which is called Jiading. It's well known for their automobile industry. We're proposing 40 by 40 meter block, and street is 10 meters wide. So you can see, because it's not the big city of Shanghai, rather it's small town, so we're using a smaller dimension even than the typical European block. So that's the whole argument. And then we got an approval now from the Jiading government. We're doing the specific building design. So I'm just going to go through these slides very quickly so you get an idea. So we're here, somewhere here. And then Jiading is right there, south side. This is the Huangpu River. And then the project, I think that's probably not very important. I'm just going to show you quickly. And then we were drawing from all these experiences, mostly from this part of China anyway. It used to be a lot of water towns in this part of China and so on. And this is our proposal. If you look at the master plan, really nothing sexy, but it's just small and hopefully humane. So it's a big project, but the concern is how to make it small. And the urban grid, a lot of studies, and the street, and is it covered from rain and too much sun and so on. So anyway, so this is all this technical stuff. So and then how to put people and a car and a bicycle back into one street. This is something, if you're from the United States, you probably have not heard much. Although I heard in New York City recently, they did an experiment. But in countries like Holland, like Japan, they have done quite a bit. Is to make the car, to make a turn every 50 meters or so, that the car has to slow down. And then, in fact, if you want to rush to a place, you don't drive here, and then all the cars, they have to go extremely slow, and then it really makes peace with the pedestrians. So this is called a shared street. Actually, that's for me a better Dutch inventions than the ones we probably encounter nowadays more often. So anyway, there's a pedestrian street and canal street. And in China, you don't see urban spaces embrace or engage the water courses much, because water courses, rivers are controlled by a totally different agency. All they do is say, you gave me 100 meters, and then back off from me, and then I'm gonna take care of the river. And then we're still negotiating with the Water Bureau and see. But if we want to make the water part of the urban life, we want to make the water livable too. And so that's another struggle we're having. This is so wide because the Water Bureau asked for it, but we're still fighting. So it's a fight all along. Anyway, there are more technical drawings as to how to, not just to argue for this idea, how to make it happen. So that's these drawings are about. So anyway, there's something less probably conceptual. And this is something we have already built in China, actually in Beijing. It's not a city. It's a research and development campus for one of the largest Chinese software companies. It's called Ufida. So anyway, the way an architect works, as you can see here, could be a very different. Often that from our office, we start to do analysis of all kinds. And what you see here is the notes we made from our conversation with the end users. Meaning it's not the bosses of this computer software company, but the computer programmers. And we initially thought they would start to work 9 o'clock, 9 to 5 pretty much. But in reality, they don't. They are more like architects. They may start late in the morning, and then they would go on. They could go on and on. They may stay in their office even overnight and so on. They have a very healthy life, and also just like architects. However, as architects, though, we actually we're very much concerned with the health of the users of our architecture, and actually we do know how to live more healthily. So that's why you see all these. They're not like the little Bruce Lees, whoever, Jet Lees, and these are people who really need to stretch out during the day. And where do they do that? You don't want to do it in your office. You want to get out and then do it somewhere which you get some fresh air, get some oxygen and so on. They work in teams, so you see a lot of different team working scenarios and so on. So anyway, and then we were asked, as usual, to make an iconic building. They would love to have at least a 20-story building, and perhaps looks like this bottle, who knows. But we were saying that you're on the edge of the city, and then if you make a 3-story building, on the top, you can expose to the sun, to the rain, to the weather, and then if you're on the ground, you're connected, of course, to the ground. You can have your own pet, maybe. And then when you're in the middle, it's also going to be a unique experience. It's different from the 3rd floor or the ground floor. So you should have 3 stories instead of, how many stories. So they bought the argument. We made a 3-story building. So this is the ground floor. You see all the different programs being put in. And then in reality is this. This picture is really the best I have for all the buildings I have done, because we always envision a way people would use our building. Do people actually do it or not? That really is something we have no control. In this case, for this company, now that it's the habit or the culture of the company, most people do it is to take a walk during lunch hour. So I happened to be there on a very cold winter day, but people still come out, work for a short period of time and then get in. So, and then where do they stretch? That's where they do it. So anyway, so the idea of course, what we do, as I argued yesterday, is to help people to live better. If they really do it or not, actually depends. But sometimes it does work. And then there's an idea, an architectural idea behind it, is to treat the building not as an object, but as the fabric, as I argued earlier. And there's another term. It's not Chinese, although we do just as much. It's not modern, although it probably was coined by someone like Le Corbusier, one of the major figures in the modernist movement. That term is mat building, mat, M-E-T. So it's like a carpet, right? The whole idea. It can extend. It's horizontal. It can extend. It does not have an exterior figure to it. And then that's also where architecture meets the city. So from the outside, this is again our building, Yofida campus. As you can see, it seems that it could actually extend further, horizontally, and then it doesn't really have a particular kind of iconic image to it. And then within the compound, so these are the outdoor open spaces. And then we designed the landscape as well. So we took the idea of fabric a bit further. We were thinking of this conceptual weaving at that point. And then you see how vegetation and hard pavement being woven together, and then you see various materials being woven together. One of the things we did is to have glass blocks embedded in the masonry concrete masonry units, and then here we're treating the land in such a way that it looks like it's part of the buildings. In other words, really buildings and landscape, outdoor spaces, indoor spaces together, they make architecture. So that's why the little topographical changes here is rather slight, and also it doesn't pretend to be natural, but part of again architecture. You see the courtyards again, and then at dawn, layers, and then on the upper terraces where people can come out, have a cigarette too, if they wish. And then you see the multi-levels. And then they don't look like traditional courtyards or, 四合院, or hutongs, but actually there are a lot of courtyards, and then the fabric notion probably is similar to the old city, or we wish. And the small courtyards for meditation or for nap, for some other more individual activities on the third level. That's how the building looks at some points, and then the entryway, the interior space, another interior shot, and then an evening photograph. So the building is like any northern building, which has rather thick walls, but this thick skin, architects like to use that word, but it's also translucent at the same time. So that's one project. It's not quite urban, but yet we tried to address urban issues. And now, of course, ultimately, urban issues only make sense when it has to do with the quality of life. That's the really central theme of work. So, and then I want to show you another project quickly, which is in Hunan, actually western Hunan province. In Chinese, we say this area in a different way. We say Xiangxi. And there's some very famous hill towns, especially Fenghuang, Phoenix. It has nothing to do with the one in Arizona, of course. And then we designed a building for the local university. And the challenge we had was this. It was a hill town, and the site we got when we won the competition was already flattened. This is a very common practice for development in China. They would bulldoze the land flat before they do anything. So I was rather romantic about Hilltown and so on, and then as you can see, I was very disappointed. So however, we decided maybe we could, or we rather should, use architecture to reconstruct the Hilltown. And what you see is our proposal. So this is actually, it's a flat pad, but we built the building in such a way it's, it appears as if it's a building on a hill. So that's how it looks when it's completed. And then I'll show you another picture. So and then you can see, in fact, it's taller building in the back and the lower building in the front. But the idea is, first of all, of course, this reconstruction of a destroyed landscape or geography, but also is to make a building, a rather big building, appear as maybe a miniature hill town. So the idea of a city, again, still is in the project. So is this a street, or rather because it's outdoor, or actually it's just an open air corridor in the building, and so on. Let's see. So anyway, so that's again a big project, but yet it's not a city, much smaller than a city, but addresses urban issues. And another project is even smaller, is outside of China. It's in the town called Paju in Korea. So we designed a building that would reflect the urban quality of the site. Actually, this is a pedestrian commercial street. This is a vehicular road, and this is a secondary, quieter street, and this is a public green. So basically, you can see we put the commercial wing on the commercial street. This is a rather enclosed part of the program because it's a publisher which makes music. So we have a rather enclosed volume there. Offices, and some of the residential components combined. So together, as if 4 little buildings would stack up to make a courtyard building in this case as well. And then we used different materials. However, we had to do one major change to the project because for the way, rather just say for the economic roller coaster, the way architects work, even Chinese architects could be too slow. And by the time we have to build the building, our client was not able to afford the 4th building. And so that's why it became here an open roof garden. So, but hopefully, if they need it, actually they can enclose it and then they can have more spaces. And then we use the different materials to address the differences between these buildings. You're looking at wood, and then here is corrugated sheet metal on the lower part. And this material is the most the least polluted and the most clean is the air. So we use the air as a material. Again, just a close shot of that building. And then we actually designed this kind of a window and a facade system. Probably is pretty obvious here. A fixed piece of glass for view and for light, and then for ventilation. And then we have that opaque window. So anyway, so here again, a small building is not about how, in a metaphorical way it would relate to a city, but rather it responds to a set of city conditions in such a way that perhaps the design makes sense. So, and then as you can see, for all the buildings we have done, on one hand, there are issues. I'm talking about urban issues. There are other issues. On the other hand, because our basic building blocks are materials. So materials for us is always a very important concern. This is a house we built outside of Beijing. And it's a courtyard house for the hillside. So it doesn't enclose onto itself, but rather it's, I can just show a picture. So these are the more technical drawings. So as you can see, the hillside and the architecture, the building together would make a courtyard. So that's how you approach the building. And then you see this wall that is, it's a more enclosed and actually made of rammed earth. This is a very old technology, but in China, the craft of making that kind of a wall has been long lost. So we actually had to relearn it ourselves, and then we teach the laborers, and then we were able to make it. So in the information age, what's interesting is that so we not only learn from, of course, books and maybe other people we know. Actually, we were able to get a lot of information on the internet and from and the French, Swiss, and Korean architects. So it really architecture as a discipline is no longer only based on tradition, although often actually tradition, as I mentioned, could be long lost, but it's based on knowledge. So if we have the knowledge, we can keep a tradition alive. And there's a courtyard behind it. The terraces, again, from the terrace back to the courtyard, the entryway, inside our building looking out, living room and so on. And then we were talking about urban design. We look at a lot of buildings. And then here we're in Shanghai. I want to show you one interior design project. If you have time, if you are into Nouveau dim sum, I strongly recommend a trip. Never go a place just for architecture. I don't think that's a very good idea, because architecture is a place, and unless you go there, do something. So to eat is a very good excuse. So if you have been to China for how many days already, and then you know that in every single Chinese restaurant, you have a big dining hall, you have a little private booth for dining, because a good Chinese has to master the skill of eating and talking at the same time at a very early age. So anyway, so that's why we need, I guess, private dining booth. So anyway, so usually you have a space like this for a lot of big tables, and then you would have a little, hutong in a way, a corridor with smaller rooms. And we thought maybe that kind of organization of spaces could be changed. In this case, we have this tall space, so we decided to suspend the private dining booth from the ceiling. And then we made this ceiling actually out of traditional tile brick. It's a brick only for making tiles, usually for garden architecture, from the south of the Yangtze River region. And then to bring these two kinds of spaces, the big dining hall and the little dining rooms together. So you see the restaurant in action. And here you see a detail of our design. So it's a design that uses traditional material, but actually in a different way. And once, I don't know if you get to go to Suzhou, and you see how this clay tile is used for make very beautiful, also curvilinear, by the way, ceilings. So anyway, the way we made it is translucent, so the light would come through from the small dining rooms. So that's that. There's a detail of it. It's quite thin, as you can see, the brick. So anyway, so that's the traditional material, and we really have an interest, and we used it again in a different way. And then here's another example to engage a traditional material. Is the bamboo. Bamboo, it's a very green a plant because it grows super fast. A mature bamboo, it depends on the region is in. It could grow to a full height in no more than 3 years. And then there's some of the skills of working with bamboo is still around. So we learned from these craftsmen. But I just to say one thing. When you look at a picture, we meaning people from my office, we weren't there. They were in southern China. We were in sitting in our Beijing office. But these people, they use internet, they use digital camera. So that's how we would communicate on a daily basis. So we asked them, can you bend the bamboo a certain way? And then they would try during the day and send us a digital picture by the end of the day to say, is this something you wanted, and so on. It's a kind of a long-distance relationship we had. So anyway, and then in Venice, for the Venice Biennale, this is 2005. This is for the China Pavilion. So we did this structure. And then we borrowed the technique of making basket and so on, all traditional, but yet something came out probably not as traditional as the material and the technique. And they were, again, as architects, we were very much concerned with a number of very practical issues. This structure could not have foundation because there's a ruin of a convent about 1.5 meters underneath the ground. So we had to make an S-shape structure so that the structure can stay on the ground in a rather stable way, and so on and so forth. But anyway, that aside, I think we were interested in really the potential of the traditional materials and the craft. Yet, traditional material is not all we are interested in. And more, our office has been working on plastics. So this is for, as you can see, for V&A in London. Our office has been using a material a lot. It's called eco-block. It's actually polyethylene. It's for paved, driveways and parking lots. I'm sure you see them around in Shanghai, and they are called eco-blocks because grass can grow through them. The idea is that eventually you don't see them, but in reality you do. And then the green color is intense and rather ugly. But anyway, however, so we thought the green, bright and intense, worked pretty well with the intense and bright red bricks of V&A. Too bad it wasn't Christmas. That's in the summer. So we built this summer pavilion using this material. The material is 100% recyclable, and it's a very light structure, so it doesn't, again, require foundation and so on. So before we did this project, again, this is still V&A, we used the same material to build our toilet, bathroom for our own office. So we didn't use the green ones. And then again, we didn't need to make a foundation. And then it's very light in terms of weight, in terms of the brightness. 3 simple details. This one is the one I'm most proud of. This is a bubble wrap being cut into stripes, and then we roll them up and then put them in. So they're called bubble wrap sushi. Sushi roll probably should be. So anyway, here is for the Shanghai Expo. We are working on the pavilion, again using lots of plastics. This is a polycarbonate we are using. So these technical drawings, a model, I can, and the ground level, I can skip that too. So basically, the whole building on the exterior is made of plastic tubes. Looks more or less like this. So what it does is something like that. This is a mock-up in Shenzhen. This is only a little corner of the building. So with LED lights going through it, also the water for the solar energy collection going through it, and then also the water for mist making going through the whole structure. So the structure perform as a show. So you see light, you see water, you see mist, and so on. And then LED light, because the building has a thickness, a visible thickness, so you see the LED light doing not only on the surface, but really having a 3D effect. So a ladder would be able to turn and to push back and forth in the depths and so on. Here's the construction site, and you have to come back next year for the expo. It starts on the 1st of May. So anyway, I think this is the last project. What you're looking at is a so-called CNC milling machine. Again, it's in Shanghai. And the way we use it is to carve out a piece of plastic. Actually, in this case, an American product is made by Formica. So that the thinnest part of this piece of plastic, somewhere there, would be only 4 millimeters, and then the thickest part will be 4 centimeters. The material is used for make a kitchen counter. And go home and see, you may have it on your kitchen counter anyway. So this is a countertop. What's interesting is that traditionally, if you're going to make a screen, folding screen, or a shoji door, as people say in Japan, you use wood to make a frame for the structure, and then you use rice paper to create translucency to light through. And this is how we made a plastic hinge. But let me just skip this. And what we did is use one singular material to have, rather to achieve the effect of two. So you have structure and translucency, light, all from this one structure. So technology and of course, new material, as part of technology, allows us to do things we were not able to do before, but yet it does not really have to, for us to cut away from the tradition. So it's a very simple design in a way, but it really embraces, for me, some very important issues. So when we talk about digital architecture, in our own field, in the field of architecture, you usually see a particular type of design and buildings, and I would love to, and I am resisting that. So there's a kind of a blobby looking thing. It's called a blob anyway. If you are familiar with architects of such as Zaha Hadid and so on, I admire what they do. But I don't think that's the only kind of a digital architecture people can do. So anyway, so it's getting small here, or rather getting away even from architecture. And then here you can see the 4 centimeter to the 4 millimeter also being built into the thickness of the screen. And then you can see this gradation of translucency, or rather the light change. So anyway, 4 centimeters, 4 millimeters, again, the whole screen. So anyway, too many pictures. We used to dry them up, cut them up, and then you scoop out the inside, and then you have a utensil. You can use it for scooping rice or water, and to use it to keep things. We took that idea and made it into a set of dinnerware. So these are the serving plates. This is the individual set. So when they open up, you got your soup bowl, your rice bowl, your this plate and that plate. And then we hope that because if it's all circular, you waste a lot of spaces on the table. So here there are more packed. So that's that. So this is probably a better picture. And then these are the baby gourds for just for your soy sauce and so on. And then for the wine, this is for Chinese wine. And because Chinese rice wine, the yellow wine, you have to heat it, or you can cool it. So we use these double glasses. And then the Western, the European wine, or maybe I should say California wine, just to finish it up. So anyway, so again, so in the end, so I'm arguing from possibly big and possibly small to you have to be both big and small, and then back to probably the argument of possibly small here. And then this is where we produce all of this work. If you come to Beijing, so please go visit us. This is our office. Since we are, more and more concerned with, with lifestyles, rather than just the making of buildings or cities or objects, so we actually it's not a flower garden. This is a vegetable garden. We grow our own lunch pretty much. Cucumbers, we have string beans, and tomatoes, and so on. So we actually live in a particular way now that for many years, for 7 years, now that I think somehow the way we live ourselves and the way we think about how people should live, and it becomes how we started to direct our work today in China. So anyway, that's a long way from Boston or from MIT. And then you wonder what I do, in Boston. And actually, that's what I brought to MIT 4 years ago, actually. I think that's something maybe should be shared with, my colleagues in the United States. And of course, I'm sharing it with you now here. Thank you very much.